Okay, we are on Act 4, Scene 3. If I tell you that this scene takes place in England, hopefully you're thinking, like, why would it be in England? The whole play has been in Scotland. Because that's where Malcolm is. And if you remember the last scene, Macduff has gone to England to get Malcolm. Now, this is a long scene. It's like, why? Why doesn't Malcolm just rushed back? I'm like, okay, good, we're going to go overthrow. Well, if you think about it, it's like he's concerned. He's afraid. He actually thinks it might be a trap. Okay? So it takes a long discussion, and he's actually going to try to test Macduff to try to determine if he's being genuine with him. When Macduff basically says, you got to come back, we need your help, and we have to get rid of Macduff. I'm sorry. Macduff says we have to get rid of Macbeth. Malcolm says, what I believe are well, what no believe, and what I can redress, as I find the time to, friend, I will. What you have spoke, it may be so perchance. This tyrant, whose sole name blisters our tongues, was once thought honest. You have loved him well. He hath not touched you yet. I am young, but something you may deserve of him through me, and wisdom to offer up a weak, poor, innocent lamb. What Malcolm is saying to him is, you're telling me how bad things are, but nothing's happened to you. And he goes, maybe you want to give me to him to placate him and make him like you more. And Macduff says, I'm not treacherous. And Malcolm says, but Macbeth is. Okay? So what Malcolm gets to is like, listen, I just want to let you know, if I came back, he's like, the new king would be worse than Macbeth. And Macduff actually says, what should he be? And Malcolm starts, he says, it is myself, I mean, in whom I know all the particulars of vice so grafted that when they shall be oped, black Macbeth will seem as pure as snow, and the poor state esteem him as a lamb being compared with my confineless arms. This gets to the test. What he's going to try to do is convince Macduff that he would be a worse king than Macbeth, that he's more horrible than Macbeth. And his thinking is, if Macduff keeps insisting, you got to come back, you got to come back. And even if he believes that he would be terrible, he's like, then it's a trap. Because then he just wants me back. He's just trying to get me back there. Okay? So I'm going to summarize this part for you. This is the way he tests. First, Macduff is like, there's no way you could be worse. And he tells him that he is so full of lust that there would not be one woman in the kingdom that would be safe. And when Macduff hears that, he's like, that's not good. But you know what? Compared to Macbeth, that's really not bad. And to tell you the truth, you're going to be king, you pretty much could have all the women you want. So with that, Macduff didn't pass the test. So Macbeth ups it, and he goes to him, he says, I would be filled with avarice, which means greed. He goes, I would take all the money and everybody's property. And with that one, Macduff's like, that's really not good, and it's been the downfall of many kings. But Scotland's doing really well, believe it or not, financially. You can have plenty. It'll still be okay. So he's, again, not passing, because he's like, no, just come back, come back. Finally, Malcolm says, I have no qualities that a king should have. I just put a few here. Justice, temper, and stableness. He talks about being modest. He's like, I am a horrible person. And finally, Macduff is like, forget it. I don't know what happened. He's like, your parents were such great people. What happened to you? And when he says, forget it, then Malcolm lets him off the hook. Just as that's happening, who comes in? Ross comes in from England, bringing news. Now, they don't know what the news is. The news is going to be about Macduff's family. If you remember, Macbeth had Macduff's family killed in the last scene, and Ross is there to let Macduff know. When he first walks in, an interesting thing, Macduff asks right away, how is everything? How's my family? And Ross is like, they're fine. And we're like, what the heck's going on? And Ross turns to Malcolm, and is like, you really have to come back. Your presence would be such a rallying factor. Everyone would fight if you came back. And Malcolm says, I'm coming back. In fact, what he says is, I have the English general, whose name is General Seward, and 10,000 English troops are coming back with me. When Ross hears that, he's like, that's really good news. I wish I had good news for you. And Macduff's like, what is it? And he tells him. And Macduff is obviously devastated, and he keeps asking, wait, everyone? He's like, your wife, your children, your servants, all that could be found in your household. What's that set up? At the end of the scene, Malcolm is decided to come back. They have the English general and the troops. And what's it set up? Like, who should be the person that kills Macbeth? It should be Macduff. And that's where this scene ends. And a great line is when he's told his family dies, Malcolm says to him, let this be the whetstone of your grief. A whetstone is one of those spinning stones that's used to sharpen a sword. And it's like, use that to sharpen your sword so you can go and kill Macbeth. And that'll bring us to the Act 5.